Hi again, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the Property Investing Podcast, brought to you by Real Estate Investor. I'm Dennis Wong, and in this episode, I'm going to explain the difference between buying a property under tenants in common and as a joint tenant, and also talk about what happens if the government or a developer wanted to buy your property. So, let's get straight into episode 12. Recently, I had a question asked about what the difference is between tenants in common and joint tenants when owning a property with another party. Now, when two or more people own a property, it will be either set up as joint tenants or tenants in common on the title. This is something that all parties should discuss with their lawyer to see which option will suit. Now, for those listening to this podcast, if you currently own a property with one or more parties, it might be worth checking which option you fall under and whether it is in fact the best option. So what is the difference? Well, under tenants in common, each person owns a share or interest of the entire property. The share doesn't have to be of an equal split either. So if there's three people purchasing a property, person A and person B have 25% each, and person C can own 50% share. Now, under joint tenants, all owners must have equal share of the property. Now, the key difference though between these two options is what happens to the ownership of the property if one owner dies. Now, under tenants in common, if the person is deceased, their share or interest in the property will be passed on to his or her estate. So if their wishes was for the property to be passed on to the stepson, then the deceased share of the property will now be under the stepson. Under joint tenants, if a person is deceased, their share or interest will automatically get transferred to the remaining owner or owners. So generally speaking, the joint tenants option is usually used by a husband and wife buying a property. Now, as I said earlier, speak to your lawyer. Definitely recommend that because they'll be able to advise the best option based on your situation. So recently I had a couple of inquiries from investors about what would happen if the government or a developer approached you wanting to buy your property and what's the difference between them. So I thought it'd be a good topic for discussion on our podcast. In this episode, I'd like to welcome back Justin Hams to get his thoughts on this. So welcome back, Justin. Thanks for joining me again.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
And so look, can you give us some insights in terms of what the difference is between the government and or a developer looking at purchasing a property that you own?
Well, first there are big differences between a developer to the government wanting your land. A developer can offer whatever they like to the homeowner, but the homeowner actually has the option to accept it or not. With the government, it can be a very different story. The government has what's called the power of eminent domain. So in English, that basically means the government has the right to take private property for public use, to be used as such like a park or so long as fair compensation is given in return for it.
And so has this ever happened to yourself personally?
No, not myself personally, but I do know of cases where the outcome has been both good and bad for the people that actually own the land. Look, it's really going to come down to what is being offered as compensation and whether you're happy with it or the amount of it or not.
And so look, what happens if you don't want to sell?
Well, look, there's two ways a property can be acquired. It can be by negotiation with the owner, which can be a good or bad thing depending on what's been offered. Or when a compulsory acquisition is issued on your land, the government body, whether it be someone like, for example, the Department of Natural Resources or Transport and Main Roads, you'll receive a notice of intention to what's called resume. If you and the authority, whichever one it is, agree to the acquisition of your land, it will be acquired on the date listed on this resume notice. It will then be published, for example, here in Queensland, in the Queensland Government Gazette for people here. If you don't agree, you're entitled to make an objection, but it must be in writing stating your reasons for that objection and whether you would like to appear in front of the authority in person to discuss the matter. At this hearing, you can be represented by a lawyer, but be aware, you will be liable for any costs that are incurred. And there's also several grounds on which you can object, but the number one thing that people will need to remember is your objection cannot be in relation to the amount of compensation that's been offered. Upon assessing your objection, the authority will decide whether they will continue with the resumption or not, or they may even amend the notice. If they believe that your objection is not valid, They will apply to the applicable minister of whatever it is for the land to be resumed. The minister will then decide whether your land will be taken or not.
And so can you expect to receive more than market value for your property?
Oh, look, generally the amount is based on the market value of the property. A valuer will be employed to assess the market value, including any fixed improvements like large sheds or so on. If the property is your principal place of residence, your location costs such as stamp duties, legal fees, etc. are mostly approved also, so long as the new dwelling is at a similar price point. Like a normal sale though, the outgoing landholder will be responsible for the rates up until the time or the exact date that the resumption notice takes place. The value will depend on the valuer's opinion and how many comparables they have to go on. That will determine whether you get above market value or not. But look, like most things regarding the government, if there's a slight variance either above or below, more often or not, it will be below. If a developer wants your land, then definitely, you could get more. If you are the one piece of the puzzle that is stopping their future plans, it can still be very profitable for them to pay you a little or even a lot above the true value of the property. Look, it's all about the end state numbers. If, however, a landowner gets blinded by dollar signs, they can also miss out on a good profit by being greedy and overpricing the property.
And look, what about in a scenario where if you're in a strata complex, like a block of units, and a minority of the owners don't want to sell, but everyone else does?
Did I hear you say bucket of worms? What a minefield. Look, this can be both an advantage and a disadvantage for a majority or the minority.
Yeah.
Every state used to have the old laws of 100% of all owners had to agree, otherwise the bulk sale or the whole building, so to say, was vetoed. But since 2012, there's been various proposed updates to legislation in most states to amend the percentage required to get a sale across the line. Everything from the age of the development that you're looking at, the amount of units held within it, to the percentage of support has been debated upon. The argument from the development side is that some owners just hold out for totally unreasonable prices, which is true. In some cases, this definitely does happen. Then there's the other side of the fence. If most residents are chasing an uplift in dollars above the true value, it's great for them. But think about, grandma or grandpa who are in a geographically located place really close to their grandchildren and they don't want to move. So if they're forced to move against their will through majority rules, it's a disadvantage. So it all depends on what's important to you.
Excellent. Well, look, thanks so much, Justin. And look, I hope that's given you just a little bit more of an idea on what would likely happen or what you need to think about if the government or a developer approaches you to want to buy your property. Justin, I guess, was there anything to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, if there's one little thing I could just advise people to do, because there's so many variances in legislation and rules from state to state, I would advise that if you're going to be looking at any of the things that we've discussed, have a look at your local state government legislation to see what the rules are, because it's most likely they will not be the same as the state next door.
All right, so look, great advice there, guys. So look, if you've got any general questions at all, obviously you're welcome to contact us here at Real Estate Investor. More than welcome to email us at info@realestateinvestor.com.au. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to give us a call. So thanks again, Justin, for tuning in this episode.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for listening. That's it for episode 12 of the Property Investing Podcast from Real Estate Investor. Not long now until the Christmas break, so don't forget that there may still be a good time to be researching and making offers because there'll be less buyers in the market. So if you can find that one deal where the seller needs it sold, you're going to have less competition as a buyer. So if you need any assistance at all, don't forget we offer free consultations. Book in a time with one of our strategists. Or if you want to do it yourself, you can take advantage of our pro membership tools where you can find deals in seconds, crunch the numbers, get valuation estimates, look at comparables, don't pay too much. So you can definitely take up the pro membership to help you with that. So thanks for listening, and until our next episode, happy investing, and I'll catch you next time.